Eyewitness News.
And I try to ignore it, and I try to ignore it, and I try to ignore it, and then inevitably once in a while, all those walls just start coming in on me, and I just feel like I'm just getting trapped, and I feel like the air is being sucked out of the room. And
Scott's nightmare began as he sailed into Cozumel on August 10th. He told authorities he had weapons on board, 2 AR-15 rifles and 3 shotguns that were kept on these racks. Scott's father says they're needed for protection against pirates who prey on boats in the Caribbean.
Not only the insurance company, but the U.S. Coast Guard suggested we have.
Mexican authorities say they were never told about the weapons and charged everyone with gun smuggling. Eugene McClung and Scott McClung and friend Noah Bailey were arrested at gunpoint. They faced 30 years in prison. Here at the Cozumel City Hall, they were interrogated nonstop for 24 hours with no sleep and no food. Then they were taken next door to the jail, where they were kept for more than a week.
If this was a cell about the size of this room, concrete everywhere, concrete beds. We brought in some pads so they can sleep on the pads, brought in a fan or two so that they could actually have some air movement. Otherwise, it was a sauna. And they stayed in that room for 7 days straight.
After this horrifying treatment, they were marched to the courthouse, where they were ordered to stand for an hour and a half. That verdict was devastating, except Scott, who now faced 30 years in prison. He collapsed and had to be hospitalized.
Inside Edition with Deborah Norville.
For more than 5 weeks, under horrible conditions, Scott McClung was held in a Mexican jail. McClung says he wouldn't have survived the ordeal without the support of his family and his faith in God. Here's Steve Noble.
For the crew of the Rapture, this was what the ship's maiden voyage was supposed to be like. But instead of sun-filled days leading a church youth group at sea, the ship's captain found himself instead far from paradise. Held at gunpoint and locked up in a Mexican prison, uncertain if he'd ever get out. The grueling odyssey started this Beach, California-bound Rapture left Panama City, Florida. $4.5 million ship developed mechanical problems. Chief Mate Noah Bailey was forced to pull into a nearby port.
It was Cuba or Cozumel, so I chose Cozumel.
What do you think about that decision now?
I think I should have chose Cuba.
Their problems started when, once in port, they were asked by Mexican officials about the 5 guns they had on board. Weapons they say they legally had to protect themselves in dangerous waters.
Did you declare the weapons to authorities when you were here?
Absolutely. Declared them as soon as they boarded the vessel.
What happened next caught everyone by surprise. Later that day, 10 Mexican federal agents suddenly boarded the ship. Crew members were arrested and taken into custody. First Mate Noah Bailey, Captain Scott McClung, and his father were charged with gun smuggling.
I knew we were in for a long battle at that point, and I knew it wasn't going to be fun.
They had these cement slabs for them to sleep on, and
The battle intensified when the McClungs brought in attorney Bill Bollard to help negotiate their release.
it quickly turned into a nightmare for them.
Bollard claims a Mexican prosecutor asked for a $10,000 bribe. Then, in a court hearing 9 days after their arrest, Noah and Scott's father were released and was ordered to stand trial, and that could have taken months. He collapsed upon hearing the news.
It was a scary time. As the ambulance arrived and carried him away, here were his parents, his family, his crew, watching the captain of the ship being carried away on a stretcher with a very uncertain future.
McClung says life in the Mexican prison clinic was tough.
You never knew what was going to happen.
He faced late-night taunts by prison guards and often needed a tranquilizer to sleep. But while McClung held on to hope, his attorney was conducting high-level negotiations with Mexican authorities. The case against McClung crumbled, and now even the Mexican Attorney General is investigating one of the prosecutors involved. And finally, after 40 days,
They did respond, and they came through, and we'll be forever grateful for that.
That came September 18th. Scott McClung says he was an emotional wreck, calling the ordeal his worst nightmare.
With his newfound freedom, Scott McClung returned to Southern California to a hero's welcome.
Although it took 40 days, and that's far too long, it still was better than it could have been.